Fantastic. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by Supra Oracles. My name is Linda Unugboke. I'm Vice President of Business Development, and I also lead Supra's Media and Entertainment initiatives. It's great to have you join us today. We have a fantastic lineup of guests who are going to be speaking with us on the topic of Web3 in media and entertainment. We're going to be figuring out what's hot and what's not. So before I talk about this amazing and eclectic lineup of guest speakers, I just want to do a brief introduction about Supra Oracles for those of you who might not be too familiar with our company. We are based we're a global company actually, but we provide the next generation of cross-chain oracles solutions so that your blockchain solutions and your smart contracts can work better. Our focus is on making solutions better, making blockchains better, and looking around principally connected with better security, better speed, decentralization. Our teams are spread all around the world and, over 20 plus destinations globally. And we have a team of 100 people. A lot of our team members are focused on building. So we're builders, investing a lot of effort in research and in development as well of our unique solutions. Okay, so why media and entertainment? So for Supra Oracles, this is a core focus area. A lot of our teams are creative technologists. We've been involved in the creator economy space even before creator economy became a thing. So like many years back. And we are very excited about how blockchain solutions and the technology in general can really help to revolutionize the industry and also create much more fairer economies and innovative business models. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today with a fantastic lineup of speakers. So I'll get straight to it then. I'll be introducing our speakers in order of appearance and also based on how we're going to be starting off the conversation. So first off, we have Sunny River. Sunny is the co-founder of Jpeg Culture. It's the biggest creator community in Web3. And Sunny has worked as a strategist and advisor for over 40 NFT and crypto startups, including Avocado Guild, NFT.com, Polygame, among others. His experience and acumen supplies key insights on high social media strategy, content creation, market conditions, art, and messaging. Sunny also specializes in post-launch strategy to help create stronger, more active communities. As an early-stage strategic investor in well over 150 startups and leading a group of over 350 plus Web3 creators, Sunny has procured a trusted network of industry heavyweights, influencers, and developers to guide synergistic partnerships and collaborations. So, Sunny, we're really delighted to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Linda. It's great to be here.
Fantastic. So next up, we have Ceslie Armstrong, who's going to be contributing to our panel. Ceslie is an industry veteran in media and entertainment. She's an award-winning media and entertainment executive, producer, writer, advisor, art curator, and collaborator. She has produced Grammy award-winning artists, interviewed world leaders, top celebrities, and influential icons globally. In 2019, she became an early adopter of blockchain and subsequently has advised various organizations in Web3. As the CEO and executive producer of OnChain Media and Entertainment, she creates premium IP with a strong digital marketing and distribution backbone to drive revenue for the company and clients' portfolio. So media platforms and brands engage as a thought leader, experts for sure. Her expertise is sought globally. And multiple credits, too many to mention, but I'll just summarize, including features in global networks, national publications such as Marie Claire, and renowned publications, including Forbes, and of course, entertainment, E! Tonight, Access Hollywood, and CNN, among many others. So finally, Ceslie, we're really glad to have you here today with us. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, Linda, thank you for inviting me. This will be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Ceslie. All right. So finally, we have Dele Atanda, who's going to be joining our conversation. So Dele is a serial entrepreneur and CEO of metaMe, which is the world's first self-sovereign AI and ethical data operating system. He's a celebrated innovator, having led digital innovations for Fortune 100 companies, including IBM, BAT, and Diego. And those innovations actually became the gold standards for digital engagement within their sectors. Really interestingly, Dele is founder and chief Imagineer of metaMedia, which is a crypto media company, and producer of the metaIye series, which is the world's first cryptographic novel. Dele, we're excited to have you here today. He'll be talking to us about, the crypto comic franchise, metaverse storytelling, and what his team is doing, and the vision around bringing Gen Z and Alpha into the ownership economy through storytelling and play, incorporating NFTs and AI across comics, gaming, the metaverse, and beyond. Really good to have you here today, Dele.
Thank you very much for having me, Linda. Really looking forward to it.
All right, fantastic. So welcome everyone again to our panelists, to our guests. We have over 600 plus people signed up to this, closer to 700 from the last count. So this is really exciting. We're delighted to have you all here today. We're gonna start off really quickly then with while we'll wait for Sunny to get back then, and Cecily, maybe we'll continue then with you. Let's do a brief insight into your world, right? What are you working on right now, and how do you see the vision of NFTs in its current shape and form in the media and entertainment industry, and what do you think are the insights are into 2023?
Sure, thank you. I think, I wake up every morning like ridiculously excited, like it's 1996 again. I mean, I've been in the media and entertainment industry a long time, and
like deja vu.
I won't talk too much about the past, but again, here we are looking at a new distribution channel and point of preference, and that's how I think most people that have had a lot of success and been in the media and entertainment industry a long time really do look at it. We're talking about individual sort of still images to broadcast, meaning audio, video, all multimedia, live events, live performance, all aspects that already exist in media and entertainment that we sort of went from no internet to better internet, and now we're in blockchain, right? So that's really the evolution of it all. So it isn't so much about changing the business models that currently work, and they work really well. Most of them do. They drive, derivatives, downstream derivatives from, a primary source of IP. And we're always looking for the long tail value and recurring revenue bolted onto that and generated from that originating primary IP. That hasn't changed. Now we just have an and. So blockchain distribution, the incredible tools that now are starting to come forward, and services and betterment of it all, which of course Supra Oracles is part of that. The incumbency is on us as the professionals in media and entertainment to really sort of keep up with the fast moving train. I saw this happen very early on in streaming. I saw it happen very early on just in compression and what it meant to the music industry and the film industry. So now really back about 2018-19, I started looking at how can media and entertainment sort of shift into this new world. And it's not happening all at once. And people who think that it is happening all at once are maybe sort of setting themselves up for some disappointment. So what we like to do, and what I advise companies, and we do within our own company, is really say we're kind of at Web 2.25 and 0.5, and then moving into 3.0. And with the great tools, services, platforms, and ingenuity happening right now, we're able to accomplish that. So we're taking the audience with us, and that's also our responsibility. So I could go down a deep rabbit hole on, like, the wonderful things that smart contracts provide to engage those audiences, but that maybe is another discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we'll come back. We'll come back to that discussion then as we go further along. So thanks for that overview then. And then Sonny's back now. So Sonny, we were asking about what excites you right now in this space as you're working with these content creators, mostly in Web2. I know you have like a great understanding of what's happening in that sector, and how you see them making the move and the shift towards Web3, right? What has been the key insights that you've seen over in 2022?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, cool. So it's a really interesting space to be in at the moment in the creator economy. It's a $160 billion a year economy, and it's exponentially growing. So, in this attention economy that we live in, you can't sell anything to anybody without their attention, right? So, at the moment, these big social media platforms have, really started to take over the internet. People aren't necessarily sitting at home watching TV as much anymore. They're spending their time more so on these social platforms. And, with the rise of these, megaliths like TikTok that are just, absolutely killing it in, acquiring people's attention and holding it. What underpins these platforms are the creators, right? Like, without the creators, these platforms cease to exist, really. So, with all their tech and all their, money that's going into figuring out how to, build these algorithms that sole purpose is trying to make money and to acquire people's attention and hold it for as long as possible. It's these creators that are there, developing themselves and growing and, really starting to take advantage of the tech infrastructure that's getting built basically out for these creators to take advantage of. So, at the moment with Jpeg culture, what we decided to really focus on was, stepping into these social platforms and harvesting all these creators and sort of, building our community off the back of the creators. So I myself, I've been a creator since, 2016. I've got a few 100,000 followers, and we decided to, really focus in on this area and could, sort of see the writing on the wall, and, could really see how powerful these creators are starting to become. Now, really where things are at the moment is for the creators is, trying to, find where the underpriced attention is. All these different media platforms that are all, in major competition against each other, they're all trying, they've realized that it's the creators that, make up their platform, right? So they're all trying to figure out what are the metrics that the creators, are looking for, because they're trying to, it's a competition for, who gets the creators basically. And one of those things, the primary thing that we look for as creators is it's, the ability to be able to grow our audience, right? It's that organic growth, to be able to reach new audiences to the best of our ability. And that's where TikTok has really, dominated recently with their algorithm is, based off certain metrics, they've been able to develop this algorithm that allows you to get out to the world and get that organic growth. So, that's why all the rest of the media platforms, they've all started to try to copy TikTok. And, we've got YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels there, and even Facebook fan pages
Yeah.
are really starting to develop these new algorithms based around short form content, because that's what's really working. It's that people's attention is starting to decrease, and it's turning into the way to sort of get in front of people and hold their attention, all the rest of it. So what we've really been looking at is finding where that underpriced attention is, where these platforms are, enabling the creators with their organic reach to get out there more. And believe it or not, it's Facebook fan pages at the moment that's really starting to push themselves up, because over the last couple of years they've lost so much of their market share. They originally had all that organic reach, and then over time the ads started coming in and they made you pay for the reach, but they've lost so much of their attention, so much of the market share, that they're really starting to ramp things up again. And
so it's interesting you say they're ramping things up. And what are they doing differently then? Do you know what they're doing differently? Because I think definitely the ads were a big factor, and then obviously iPhone came with privacy and all that stuff, and that's kind of like took lots of people out of the of the ad game. So what do you know what they're doing differently now?
So that's exactly right. I mean, Facebook's main revenue model was ads, and then with the iPhone update, companies like Coca-Cola and all these massive companies that would be advertising, dropping $50 million, yearly or whatever it is on their platform, no longer could they start to track their users around the internet, right, and be retargeting them. So with all that, it's a supply and demand thing, right? So with all of that revenue lost, they've started to lose market share. So what they're starting to do is basically copy what TikTok is doing, and understanding that it's about the creators. They need to look after the creators, and they need to focus on that organic reach. They need to enable the creators to get out to the world, and so they're basically emulating what TikTok's done. And so they're focusing on the reels, the short form reels, which is the same as Instagram, obviously. And so the more that the creators can start putting content onto their platform, they're going to be promoting it as much as possible. And that's supply and demand thing, right? So because there's not many creators on there at the moment, we've forgotten about it. Most of this new age of creators that have come through haven't really used Facebook at all. They kind of went straight to Instagram. So they've come through with this massive resurgence, and they're really starting to push any creator that starts to jump on there, and that's where we need to find that underpriced attention.
Nice. Oh wow, great. Okay, I think that's a really good thanks, Sonia. I think that's a really good segue, because you said two things. You talked about algorithm around attention, the attention economy, right? And then being able to what TikTok and the other social media platforms are doing around data, and being able to just create almost not a targeting, but intelligent data and interest based content as well to users. So I think that's a great segue to Dele. Dele, tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now at Meta, and also just from a Web3 perspective, right, or blockchain based perspective of how how you see social media platforms kind of evolving, and based on these concepts around how do we include data privacy, attention economy, how do we take advantage of these new trends in the social media Web3 world?
Yeah, great. It's a lot to pack in, but I'll try and make it concise. So, I mean, primarily what I'm working on at the moment is twofold. On one hand, there's metaMe, which is essentially about privacy enabling technologies and a platform that gives people a way to own their data in a real, tangible and meaningful way. And the summary of that is what we're creating, which is a new type of crypto asset, effectively, which we see as the next evolution. If you think of cryptocurrencies as the first evolution, NFTs is the second, then these things we call MPODs, minimized private obscure data sets, are the third iteration. And they just simply enable us to turn information into a native asset that we can trade. Whereas NFTs really are certificates of ownership. What MPODs do essentially is make the asset itself real. So a simple example would be if I say, for example, you buy a virtual car. Well, you pay for it with ETH or Bitcoin. That's just money effectively, right? And then you have an NFT, which functions like a deed, a certificate, a title, your certificate of ownership. And if it's a smart NFT, it could potentially even be a key to that car. But what about the car itself? That's the issue, right? So MPODs address that part. So that's what we're doing with metaMe, and we basically create an operating system that enables these assets to be consumed by applications across Web 1, across Web 2 and Web 3 accordingly. But we've been in this space for a while around data sovereignty and data ownership and innovating and experimenting with different technology. And we understood that in order to achieve scale and to resonate with the market, we needed to find a way to talk about these things in a less technical way, in a way that was more emotional, that was more spoke to people's hearts.
That's right.
So that's what led us to start Meta Nights, which is basically a crypto comic saga that basically talks to the issues of decentralization, self-sovereignty, data ownership, in a way that, in a science fictional manner. Our elevator pitch is think the Matrix meets Mr. Robot on the road to Wakanda. Is sort of
no, I really like that, because I think that's where a lot of us in the industry lose a lot of of our communities when we begin to speak a lot of tech, really high complex technology. Well, being able to weave it into storytelling, which everyone can relate to, makes it easy, right? And then it's like, okay, I actually get these concepts because you're teaching and we're learning, but we're just having fun while we're doing this, right? So it's a different way of actually engaging audiences.
Absolutely. And it's a way of engaging audiences, but it's also a way of consolidating concepts, ideas, and information into something that people can consume. And we've done this as a species for millennia. Some would argue that's even how we became human, effectively through organized storytelling. And that's what allows us to become organized at grand scale. So I think it's hugely important. And I think, we are at a massive inflection point in the techno space generally at the moment. There are a lot of technologies, AI, blockchain, AI, blockchain, IoT, crypto, all of these are all converging, VR, AR, metaverse, all of these are converging at the moment to really launch a new kind of technological canvas around which we can paint new things. So I think definitely when we look at social media, it's a really interesting space, because I think the first thing I think when you look at the crypto space and you look at NFTs specifically over the last couple of years, there's been obviously a massive boom in the space. And that's really primarily been led by the art industry with people and the like. And that in itself, I think, is phenomenally unique. I don't know any technology in history, even paint, that has been led and embraced by art in the way that NFTs has. And I think that's really important. That's really important when it comes to the cultural importance of this technology and how it, really kind of gets into the culture of society, because art is really the highest cultural medium or space that we have.
Yeah.
But by the same token, I think that there's a little bit of a danger with that as well, because art is really a very highbrow industry, and it's not something that the masses participate in directly. Generally speaking, very few people buy art in that sense. It's not surprising that the crypto space is flocked with, because it's money and bankers are often very closely related with the art industry in that regards. But I think the important, what I see coming now in 2023, particularly, is media. And I think this is the real promise of crypto. I think, because, art is a game of scarcity, and media is really about mass. And it's really about mass media. And so I think micropayments and digital, the ability, paradoxically, the crypto gives us the ability to create scarcity for digital media. But I think that I think what's going to happen is that scarcity will be applied at scale, as an alternative to streaming, for example, which is starting to encounter huge problems and huge headwinds in that regard. And I think social is another vector in this space as well, because I think another thing that is happening in the NFT space, if you think about where NFTs are at the moment, they're very much Web 1.0, really, because it's all push. There's very little user-generated content as far as NFTs go. Yes, we've got this vast abundance of creators, but this is a really interesting point to what was being said earlier, in the sense that social media companies like Facebook, they were never really creator platforms. Facebook basically built itself by monetizing relationships and monetizing our interactions with our family and friends, and inserting advertising into that. Understanding our interests. They weren't really geared towards creators. And the general rule of networks is the 1-9-90 percent. You've got 1% who are creators, 9% who are curators, 9% who are just basically consumers in that sense. And Facebook was never really in that creator or necessarily even curator space historically. And I think that there is this rise now of the creator economy, and in that sense, social media is going to become interesting. I think that's why platforms like TikTok are really succeeding, because they are allowing people to become creators in that. And I think there's an interesting interaction between that and crypto, whereby, that's going to be the next frontier, when you can create these 20-second videos or content, micro content, and mint them as NFTs, and have this whole passage of revenue that, that can span out, in perpetuity. So I think that's interesting.
That's really great you said that, because our team as well, we are so into looking at, you mentioned micro content and then being able to mint as NFTs, and the consumption of that, what that can look like across across different across different channels as the Web3 space kind of like evolves. So that's interesting to hear you say the same as well. So Ceslie, then we're talking about social media, we're talking about NFTs, business models. How do you, in terms of like blockchain service models for agencies and media platforms, which you specialize in, based on your area of expertise, how do you see that evolving? How do you see that shaping up and being actually probably disrupted in a good way?
Yeah, I like that, and I have to say that I definitely agree with Dele and what he was saying about storytelling, because ultimately it is about the storytelling. This is a new evolution of how we're telling stories, because now we have blockchain and new technologies that we take into consideration in that storytelling process and distribution. And that's really what it's about, because you must engage an audience through great storytelling, hold on to that audience and that engagement, and that's what's going to drive deeper engagement as well as revenue simultaneously. So it all begins with that IP, and sort of going back to what we're saying about the creator economy. The creator economy has been around for a while. That's not necessarily something new. So that's another discussion.
I guess in the context of access, right? Having more people having access to being able to.
Sure.
Yeah.
And this is sort of the excitement of jumping out of bed in the morning, is the decentralization of it all, right?
Yes, exactly.
So what I've been advising other companies for a few years and helping them build, and now for OnChain Media and Entertainment as an example, our business model is very straightforward, media and entertainment. However, what we've done is, because we have the opportunity to shift from one foot in Web 2, one foot in Web 3, and shift back and forth, take the consumer, take the audience through that. They don't even know that they're doing it. You know, one moment they're on a plane and one moment they're not. And that's how it should be. It shouldn't be difficult. It shouldn't be scary. Yes. If they want to consume that story, it's incumbent on us to go directly to them. It's almost now a new D2C business model. So the way that we've constructed it, for instance, in our multimedia side, we have channels. You know, you can go on our website, you can click on a channel, and you can see it almost looks like television channels. And we have them by verticals. We have them by the talent, because we have talent under contract. We have, right now, we're focusing on photography because we think that is the first entry point for storytelling. Whether you're looking at an ad, whether you're looking at a beautiful editorial, if you want to buy a car, you look at a picture of the car first, right? So if you want to hear a great story or see a great story, you look at an album cover of a podcast. You look at, so the photo is the entry point to it. So, you know, we have Pulitzer Prize winning and, you know, legendary photographers, archives, filmmakers that are in our talent division and our originals. And so we embed their works in what people are used to consuming. So for instance, we have an online magazine where we have audio interviews, we have Q&As people can read. It's all journalism based, but those images that are for sale as NFTs are embedded in the stories. So you can imagine how easy it is to interact. You know, you don't come to our site and you have to go buy some ETH first. You have to connect your crypto wallet. You know, right there, it's a barrier to entry for the majority. I mean, people who are in this space were like, it's no big whoop to connect an audience. Yeah, I just bought some crypto, you know, but that is a very small, statistically, it's a very small percentage of our overall buyer economy, if we want to look at it that way. Right. So if you want to connect the creators to the purchasers and the audience and build a real experience and a real exchange in a decentralized way, you've got to take away that barrier to entry. So that's what we've done with our company. We're working with others to do the same. And also, you know, going back on sort of how Dele explained it is, you know, we look at NFTs, quite frankly, we rarely say NFTs anymore. You know, that phrase, even, you know, Roham, the founder of Dapper Labs, who created the ERC 721 contract, you know, he's even said, Vitalik has even said they never even conceived that people would be saying NFTs. So it sort of has, so I'm quoting them. No,
I know. Because the real meaning of NFTs are just non-fungible tokens, right? So any kind of digital assets. You know, unique. Yeah, got it.
It's a receipt. It represents something, you know. Yeah. So you know, we, for instance, we go all the way from, like right now, David Binder has a show going on sale of Mother Teresa portraiture, Julia Child, Jackie Onassis. Nice. Just one example. We also have a bunch of really cool rock and roll, you know, Elton John and Jerry Garcia, and a bunch of, like, we have a very wide range of things that we're working with, but there's stories behind all of them, whether you want to buy them or not. You can buy them with a credit card. You know, we're minting mostly to Solana and Polygon because it's easy. And so I'm bragging on ourselves a little bit, but I'm just using us as an example. I see in my calls all day long to Hollywood and to publishing companies in New York and so on, it's we're all kind of speaking the same languages. How do we embrace this technology and introduce it to our existing audiences and then find new audiences? And you see a very good example of Starbucks that just, you know, Dave Rios was, you know, announced theirs. And, you know, Hermes, all of LVMH you see in the fashion industry. You know, I covered 38 seasons in New York Fashion Week as a fashion journalist. And, now I'm hearing from people constantly, tell us how to get into NFTs, but we don't want to be in NFTs because that's a dirty word. We just want to relate to our audience and do something new. So we're in this a bit of a tumultuous time, but I think like anything when it's new, that happens. And you look at really solid companies and solid technologies, again, like Supra Oracles and many others that really kind of will hold the ship steady.
Yeah, you provide the infrastructure to just make sure it's all
1,000,000%. I spent over a year researching and taking meetings to find out, like, you can't jump into this quickly if you're building a media and entertainment company from scratch, or if you have an existing one, if you're a very old and strong, film studio, whatever it is, you have to really, really find the right infrastructure, partner with the right people, stress test everything and make sure it's good to go, because that audience is your customer is the most important thing.
Absolutely. No, great insights, Ceslie. I really like the way you're talking about making it easier for traditional creators, like experience, because that's not, technology is not necessarily their forte or what they need to be interested in per se. They just need a good service that works for them. So how you're bringing that to maintain those digital assets on chain, but also I was thinking, as you're speaking, I was thinking about royalties, like, this is the perpetuity, this is the tracking of royalties, breaking all that silos and bottlenecks around how.
Right. I'll jump in. I'll give you an example. So we have something called OnChain Wire Portfolio. So we have a long list of photojournalists because I come from that world, right? I have those relationships. So we're doing a direct to consumer and a B2B business model for them, right? So right now, when photographers, for instance, when they license images and they use a wire service to do that, they make pennies and it's their own work. So we've kind of stepped back. We kind of make a little bit of money, we have bills to pay too, but it's a direct connection for them to license using smart contracts. They're able to license their images directly to their consumer, which many times are other publications, any kind of media company, a blogger, anybody a website who wants to license an image and use it, and they're able to interact directly. So, they've got nascent assets that are sitting on a hard drive somewhere, or they're sitting in a cloud somewhere, and they're not producing any revenue for anyone or any income for the IP originator and holder. So through smart contracts and the NFT being the token representation of that, they're able to not only generate income now, but a long tail royalty stream for themselves.
Yeah, nice, cool. I think that's really interesting because Sonny, the question I'm gonna move to Sonny now, because the question I had in mind to ask him is directly linked to what you just said, Ceslie, which is around content monetization and economic transformation for long-term success, for these content creators. What are your perspectives on that, Sonny?
Yeah, so it's really interesting from a brand's point of view. Firstly, I guess, as far as content is concerned, like we've been working with a lot of brands recently and, trying to figure out different ways and strategies that they can start to implement, content into part of their overall marketing strategy. And, marketing has, been begun to evolve over time, especially with the likes of, this short form video content and these, social media platforms becoming more and more prevalent, and, working out ways to, really provide value first to the audience, right? Like nobody's going to follow your channel if you're just, shilling your product or just talking about your product all the time, trying to work with creators, whether the creator is the CEO of the company or, they're hiring an experienced creator to come in and work in-house for their company, trying to really, strategically work out ways to, know their audience, but also provide actual value to them, and working out a long-term strategy that is going to work, that's sustainable, right? Like if you're the CEO of a company, you might, and you want to be the face of your company and be putting yourself out there, you might not have the time to be, putting out 5 pieces of content a day, right? And if you sort of set that bar for yourself and you can't achieve it, then you're not going to get it done at all, right? So it's sort of like, figuring out that sustainable, content strategy that's going to work over time, and, figuring out ways to really provide value to your audience. And as far as the content creator goes, in monetizing your content, it's extremely exciting at the moment because, as we said before, all of these social media platforms are really focusing on, how can we provide value to the creator, because the creators are becoming more and more powerful, more and more prevalent. These are the people that have developed these extremely, strong connections with their audience. It's what every brand and company dreams of, right? And that's why, a lot of brands are working with creators and all the rest of it. But yeah, so, these social media platforms are trying to work out how can we help these creators monetize their audience, because that's like the next step as a creator, right? It's like you can utilize these platforms and their amazing organic reach to get the audience, but then how do you actually make money as a creator? Is it just through brand deals, or and this is something that's really exciting with Web3, is the implementation of things like NFTs. And we've just seen Instagram release NFTs to their platform, and we know that TikTok's also working on this in the back end. They're working on being able to basically distribute NFTs through their platforms and all the rest of it. So
and that's
yeah, it's
like
really
minting
exciting.
the NFTs that the content creators for their content creators, right? Because they've changed their monetization model recently as well. That's TikTok. Previously, so TikTok, you mentioned TikTok, isn't it? Working on this in the background.
Yep, TikTok's working on NFTs. They haven't released it to the public yet. Instagram have, but yeah, as far as actual monetization, goes for creators, TikTok specifically, they announced a couple of months ago that they're working on. So at the moment, YouTube enables their creators through ad revenue, right? So you get X amount of dollars per 100,000 views because they have ads on their platform. TikTok has ads, but not in the same way. So you can't make money from creating content on TikTok at the moment, right? But they announced a few months ago that if you can get over 100,000 followers, you're going to make X amount of dollars for your views. Yeah. So yeah.
No, that's really exciting to see how these, especially a platform like TikTok, right? What the implication would be if it actually moves on to minting NFTs as an initial starting point, and how that would build out in the competitive landscape, because that's where it is. There's a lot of competition going on right now between TikTok and YouTube as well in terms of like audience acquisition.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, NFTs have so many different types of utility, right? And from a creator point of view, it's like you can be using them as a way to support the creator. You can be using them as gated content, and to be part of an exclusive community. And you can also be releasing your content as NFTs and selling them as like collectibles and things like that. So yeah, it's really, really exciting to see the progression there.
Yeah, nice, cool. You mentioned minting content as collectibles, and Dele, you're doing stuff around comics. So is that do you have that in mind, collectibles as part of your series? What's the storytelling like? So is doing storytelling in this metaverse, in this new world of cryptographic novel comics. So what's that like? What's the vision as well? And I think to the point as well that Sonny just made about minting collectibles. Do you have any perspectives on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so it's threefold. I mean, I think the first thing was we wanted to tell a story about decentralization. and about why it's important, about data sovereignty, that was exciting, that people could connect with. And that sort of has been the driver. And I think it's unique in that regards as a comic franchise, that really superhero story that talks about, you know, a digital world, a physical world, but from the context of Web3, in the sense of decentralization versus centralization, and, you know, tyranny and liberation in that context. So that was the first point in terms of the NFT world, or the new crypto media versus traditional media. But then the second thing we realized very quickly in starting to formulate that story, was that NFTs, and this was pre-NFT as an industry per se, back in 2019, we realized that this was a way to actually introduce the technology as well. And the idea of digital collectibles really was driving that. And we couldn't talk about NFTs. So we ran a campaign on startengine.com, where we are 100% a community funded project. We've had no venture funding at all. You know, we've been completely community funded. We raised $1 million on Start Engine. And, you know, part of the premise when we went to market was that this technology, blockchain enabled storytelling, can allow us to create collectible digital media. And, you know, rumor has it that Vitalik, even when he started Ethereum, it was out of frustration that he'd been playing World of Warcraft and building up this big library of assets, and he changed the code and he lost all of his assets, right? This is a big problem in the entertainment space, whether it's in gaming or comics. It's kind of a similar problem, that you know, when we invest a lot of time in these, in gaming particularly, you invest a lot of time and you don't have ownership of these assets. But with comics as well, you know, it's like very much a collector community. And we see comics now, I think the original Batman went for over $1 million recently. So it's become, you know, as we move into the 21st century, these late 20th century art mediums are starting to get respect. I love what Ceslie was saying about photography in that regard as well. It took 100 years for photography to be respected as an art medium, but that's really where it is now. So I think in a similar way, comics as a collectible kind of pop art is starting to become an established format. And so for us, the ability to translate that into digital is really exciting. And in that sense as well, you know, in our project, we have motion comics, which is a uniquely digital type of comic. It's like an animation. It's halfway between an animation and a still. So we make those available as NFTs in the short term, in terms of how that goes forward. And I think the third thing, which is we're still at very early days, and, you know, we are doing a lot of experimenting around this, is that this whole crypto space and, you know, NFTs, metaverse, cryptocurrencies particularly, and crypto data, I think is a really important part of it as well. This is going to enable a new type of way of telling stories and a way of experiencing stories, particularly in the metaverse. And I think that this is something that we're going to see a lot more of. I think the metaverse is an, you know, listening to Sunny's points about, you know, TikTok and social media, they have some tough times ahead, because I think they have to figure out NFTs, and they're all racing around trying to figure that out at the moment. That's one significant problem area for them to resolve. But then they also have to figure out the metaverse, and that's a completely different type of problem. And, you know, Facebook can run around saying that they're meta and that they're metaverse champions and throw $10 billion into it. That doesn't solve the problem. That doesn't make them innovative. That doesn't make them actually fit to succeed in this space. And quite frankly, the way that they're approaching it at the moment, of basically taking their model of bringing advertising as it is in their Facebook social media world into the metaverse, I think is destined for spectacular failure. So what you're
saying is that there's opportunity for new companies, new, you know, maybe Web3 native or blockchain enabled native companies to really get into this space. They have an edge. That's what I hear you say, compared to established Web2 companies, as an example.
Yeah, I mean, it's the typical S-curve. You know, when refrigerators were created, none of the ice trucking companies got into refrigeration. It's kind of just one of the ways that industry works.
Yeah.
And it reminds me a little bit of the birth of television. When television arrived, what people did was they basically put radio shows on TV with a still image, because that's what they knew. And nobody had figured that you could like create moving pictures and all of this stuff. And I think that's sort of where we are with the metaverse still at the moment. The whole canvas that it represents, a whole new type of experience, I think is going to come. And I think the Web3 native companies are going to be much better positioned to create those new models and to experiment in that way.
Yeah, nice. Okay, cool. So maybe I'll jump back to I'm looking at the time. So we have some time for Q&A right at the end of this session, but it's been so engaging. So what I would like to do is bring everyone back on screen, if that's okay. Diverse perspectives, like Sonny, from your expertise around social media, everything that is going on in that space, and how the content creators are just really looking to utilize and make the most of NFTs and Web3 in particular. I guess NFTs is like a starting point for them because it's easier to engage with. So what you're doing, Ceslie, around really helping to transform the media and entertainment industry using IP and the benefits of blockchain and smart contracts to facilitate all of that, and then Dele, your views around data and storytelling in the metaverse. And so I think this all kind of comes together really nicely to tell almost like a full picture of what the future of media and entertainment can be moving forward. I would like to speculate. I don't know who I'm going to drop this to, but let's speculate. When you see the ecosystem, when you see the industry really adopting blockchain as a core enabler to deliver some of these visions that we have for the industry, anyone is open to take that up? Just give an estimate of timeline.
I'm happy to take a first stab at that. I think it's a really difficult thing to quantify in time. It's like that Amari's law. It's always underestimated in the short term, overestimated in the short term, underestimated in the long term. I will tell you a very a simple example though. I was at Diageo. When I was at Diageo, we created a virtual enterprise meeting space in Second Life. We had a dispersed team across 4 continents, and we met every month or every couple of weeks. And so we created a space in Second Life to experiment how we could bring our team together in a virtual space. This is kind of early metaverse experimentation. This was 2007. And at the time, Gartner had this hype cycle. And they said that, it's famous, the Gartner hype cycle, right? And they said that this metaverse technology, this immersive web thing was 15 years ago. And that's exactly where we are today. So in many senses, people say that it's 10 years off and whatnot. I think it's a lot closer than people realize, because I think it's been incubating for the last 15, 20 years in that regards. So I think, it's like they say, progress in technology is always slow until it isn't. And I think
exactly.
that inflection point, and then just suddenly it's going to be everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Nice. I have to riff on what Dele said. I think he's right, and sort of for us in sort of the music and live performance and IRL world, I think when blockchain is going to be adopted, and also in straightforward media, is when the masses adopted. And the way that that's going to happen, I think in the most predominant way, is through brands. And I think brands like Starbucks, companies like Live Nation, like we work with a platform that works with Live Nation, Ticketmaster. So, when you get in who uses a paper boarding pass anymore, unless it's an emergency and you've lost it? You just use everything's smart wallet, right? So, that's really not that different than the utility behind an NFT, which is also a ticket. So I think it's the language that needs to shift, and we work really hard at our company just to do straight talk and language to people about what this is, and they get it immediately. So I think brands will bring the mass adoption, and I think it's going to be a tipping point. It's going to happen all of a sudden. People, when they don't know they're on blockchain, I mean, most people can't really tell you what the internet is. So do they care? Yes. No, they just want to know that they bought a ticket to go see a concert or a sporting event or whatever it is, and they got in and they had fun. Like, that's what they want. That's the experience. So I think that is when people will not know about blockchain, but will experience the benefit of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. 100%. Cool. So Sunny, any closing thoughts then before we move to the Q&A?
Yeah, cool. Look, I think as far as content goes, for anyone, in this room, I think, there's two things that, we can use to sort of really take advantage of these social platforms over the next 10 years. And that's, number one, it's identifying where this underpriced attention is. These platforms are all battling it out, and they're all trying to, provide the best service. And as far as content goes, pushing the content out as much as they can to these to the consumers. So it's identifying that, and they're constantly changing, right? Like I said before, Facebook fan pages is right up there at the moment. We're focusing on Facebook fan pages, YouTube Shorts, huge, TikTok, and Instagram Reels is right down the bottom. So keeping track of that, and also just trying to figure out that sustainable content model for yourself, like what works for you, and making it reasonable so that you can continue to do it over the long term. And looking at those two things, and you should be good to go, and try to get as much out there as possible.
Consistency and just being continuously at it, right? I think it's interesting that the content world is almost like quantity. Obviously quality matters, but also quantity as well is a great measure of success.
Well, I mean, like initially, like while you're trying to get out there and try to get these algorithms, like you need to put out as much as possible, right? So that the algorithm can match you with your audience. So the more you can put out initially to really find, your audience and your tribe, the better. And then, as you start to grow and as your following starts to grow, you can start to scale that back a little bit and focus a little bit more on quality.
Okay, fantastic. Great insight. All right, cool. So one final question then, and we move to Q&A. Cecily, what do you think is going to be next in Q1? Very specific around short term. So we're going to put you on the hot seats. Q1 2023.
We're on a fast moving bullet train, so we can only Q1 is like, wow, So I'm planning on, and I hope I'm planning well, is that it's really going to be about the actual activation and people using and exploiting the utility that smart contracts represent, where it is just like, oh yeah, I'm going to Starbucks and I'm using it, like they rolled out Monday, that it's in their everyday lives. So I think from the consumer side, when the fear is out and they're realizing the utility behind it, I think that has a vast shift. That will cause a vast shift in many countries, many organizations, many small communities all around the world. And the second prong on that is the really incredible, really meaningful relationships that can happen through storytelling that smart contracts provide and blockchain provide, because it's direct to consumer, right? So it's that fan, it's that person, it's whoever they are that wants to have that meaningful relationship, and there's not all the noise in between. Like, that is a thing of beauty, right? So we talk in blockchain on the cryptocurrency side of financial sovereignty. I think this is I'm calling it life on chain. I think that's like, I can't wait. So,
Cool, nice. Thank you so much to all the speakers. Well, we're not done yet, so we have Q&A. So please, everyone in the audience, if you've got questions, ask your questions in the Q&A tab, and then we'll have someone pick them up. All right. So while we wait for the questions to come in, it's been, I think for me, just summarizing then the conversations that we've had so far, a great highlights and perspectives from the panelists, right from conversations around what the vision is for content creators who are in the Web2 space, looking to Web3. So what are the key, what are the key attractive points for Web2 right now for content creators? Because I think we need to know the audience, right? We need to understand what they need to be able to create the right kind of solutions for them. As Ceslie said, it's about removing that barrier to adoption, making it seamless, and then having the new service models that can really help to integrate blockchain services in an easy way for both content creators and the consumers as well, direct to consumer models. And then to Dele's point about storytelling and just creating new ways of sharing the concepts around the digital self-sovereign identity, as we like to call it in the Web3 world. And just sharing that concept, creating new artifacts and digital assets from those storylines. So any questions coming through yet, let us know, and we can, if you're curious about any of these topics so far, we can cover them. Okay, so does anyone, while we're waiting for the questions coming in, does anyone have a question in mind? You know what, there's something that I haven't asked about, which I really like to cover while we have time, which is a question around, so Dele, you talked about community storytelling, community building, direct to fan. All this stuff is really important, right, within the Web3 world, but also decentralized autonomous organizations, which we call DAOs.
Right.
How is that shaping up in this space, and especially for how is this shaping up for media and entertainment?
I mean, I think it's going to be a really important part of it. I think there's two aspects to DAOs. One is like governance, and it's really being able to implement a form of governance in an immutable manner. And the other thing is around automation, and that's really just about automating and effectively being hands-off and just having this automated execution of that governance in that regard. So I think the issue of governance is still very nascent, and I think there's a lot of experimentation that needs to happen around governance itself, things like quadratic voting, because it's really about having ethical governance models in that regards. And I think that's still quite nascent, but it has to be. And I think that's not something that can be rushed. It's something that needs a bit of experimentation. But I think things that are a little bit more straightforward in terms of automating them through DAOs is already coming to play. So I think one of the interesting areas for DAOs in this space in media and entertainment is commissioning projects, for example, where a community can use DAO, and it depends on how you want to structure it. It could be certain members of the community or all of the community can have voting rights in terms of what type of projects get commissioned and how that how funds are distributed. So that can have a very material impact in terms of content that gets greenlit. And there's something again. I think Ceslie was saying it earlier that some of that. I think there are things that are going to be quite dramatic and different that come in the future. But I think there's a lot of small things. I was reading the other day about streaming. One of the big problems with creators now, with streaming platforms as they're consolidating, is that a lot of creators went into streaming on the basis that they knew they were getting paid less. They knew that they weren't getting all the syndication rights and all of the stuff that was in traditional models, but they figured that, well, their content would at least be out there and that it would be out there for a long period of time, only now to be horrified and learn that a lot of the streaming platforms are just shelving, just cutting vast amounts of content because it's not in the business model to sustain that. Well, this is a thing that blockchain and crypto can really resolve very efficiently because it's immutable. And you stick the content up on IPFS and you seed it around in enough spaces out there. And yeah, it might take a little bit while to load if something's been, but you could have content that could have been redundant for 15 years. And essentially, once someone makes a call to that, you can basically bring that content back online. So I think these kind of services and having DAOs that can facilitate that degree of through the line automation, so that when you're a content creator, censorship resistance is really important. You want your content to be permanently out there, and DAOs can really facilitate that on a very long-term basis. So I think there's some really interesting things coming into the space with DAOs and media in that regards.
Nice, cool. Yeah, and then just a final one then, because we're all over time just by a bit. What are your ideas around like physical items? We've talked about brands, right? So Ceslie, physical items represented by NFTs. What do you think around?
Yeah, well, we're doing it a lot, like 80% of the time. But it also plays into what we were just talking about: provenance. Ownership of the IP. I mean, can you imagine? Let's just do a retro example. Can you imagine if the incredible writers, artists, anything around the music industry back in Motown times? I'm not pointing a finger at Motown, but what about all those incredible artists that made no money and unfortunately passed with very little? Can you imagine if we would have had this technology then? Right? Think about the royalty structure. Think about the verification and authentication, the provenance of the works.
Yeah.
You could play this game over the history of time and say what a different world we would be living in. So I think not only is it just the utility of owning, a digital image or something like that, but it is this utility that people talk about a lot, but it is for real. That is the provenance of something. So that is another leveling of a playing field. It puts the sovereignty back in the seat, in the hands of the creator, and it's forever, right? Let's hope, that it is forever. So this is why you see people putting, grandmommy's, jewelry collection and their wine collections and this sort of life on chain that I talk about all the time, these sorts of things, provenance. So I think that is where there are physical items, not only for pleasure, because you want to see a beautiful piece of art or a photo, on your wall. And that sort of NFT acts as a COA, a certificate of authenticity, but that can go with wine. That can go with sneakers. That can go with anything you want to collect. It can be an experience. So I think that the physical side of what the provenance, the smart contracts, and the tokens called NFTs represent is really, really like powerful triumphant that we're going to see carry through in many, many, many use cases in everyday life.
Nice, sweet. Using Sunny's words, sweet. So Sunny, you got the final word then. Any advice for aspiring content creators?
Yeah, for sure. Look, I hope as many people, in this room as possible can look to focus on, at least getting some form of content out there in the world, because it's, it really does help in, building your own personal brand. And, personal brands are just becoming exponentially more and more huge, right? Like over the recent years, like you look at Gary Vee, for example, like the guy has millions of followers, but his and he can direct that attention in, anywhere he likes. His companies have nowhere near the same amount of followers, but he's the one that just has this like megalith of an audience that he's just been providing value to, right, for as long as possible. And you know what he's created content around over the last 20 years hasn't necessarily been associated with his current businesses, sort of a thing, right? So he's just really focused on providing as much value as he can to his audience over that time. He's built that trust, he's built that connection, and now he can just, you know, direct that energy wherever he likes. So, you know, we're all in a position with, you know, we've all got a phone, we all have social media to start thinking about, you know, building our own personal brands. You don't need to, you know, and TikTok's done it brilliantly over the last couple of years. They've created this way to, you know, create content that doesn't need to be so polished. It's sort of like, you know, it's more raw, it's more authentic, and that actually, you know, translates well to the consumer because they want it to be real. They want to get to know the real people behind the camera, you know. And you know, Instagram used to be very polished. Everything was like all perfect, but and that's what TikTok's done. It's given the opportunity for the everyday person to, you know, create content and all the rest of it. So yeah, I hope we can all start to create content, and yeah, look for that underpriced attention, and you know, just start doing it. Start documenting your experiences through life, through, you know, your business, and getting yourself out there, and you know, focusing on quantity as much as you can. Like if you can be creating, you know, 2 to 5 pieces of content a day, and you know, be getting that out to the world, it's going to have exponential value. And what you can start to do is create, you know, one piece of short form content on TikTok, and you can automate it to send out to all of these different platforms. So, you know, you're taking advantage of all of them, and, you know, focusing on that organic reach and just like infiltrating the internet. And yeah, consistency. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, and then eventually you still own that content to repurpose it for any other type of platform or
yeah, that's right. One piece goes so far.
Yeah, exactly. Blockchain platform.
Why we're here?
Web3 platforms, and yeah, and I think that's the advice as well. That's why Sonny is so into the space, because it's like you're like mastering. You're like, okay, why are you so into these platforms to make the shift and the dynamics to Web3? You know, what's the friction points? Because there are lots of friction points as well, right? So it's educating us on what those are, and the intelligence behind the other platforms that we can translate across. It's been a great panel. I've really enjoyed it. I hope everyone in our audience has as well. Thank you so much for your time, Dele, Ceslie, Sonny. It's been fabulous to have you all, and I appreciate you taking out time from your really hectic schedules. It's late evening for Dele and Ceslie, and it's early morning for Sonny as well. So thank you so much. And yes, for the rest of our audience, you know, if you're still interested in this topic, please stay in touch with Supra Oracles. You can visit our website, supraoracles.com. We also have a newsletter that we release, an industry-focused newsletter every 2 weeks, so bi-monthly newsletter. And we cover topics around media and entertainment and also DeFi as well. So once more, thank you all. It's been great to have you, and totally enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, everyone at Supra.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Ciao.